So I had a best of 3 series playing against Zigtastic. He's on my buddies list as he's one of the people who have been following the Edric deck's evolution. And he decided to build something similar to it with a few modifications of his own. And so this is setting up to be quite a challenge because many of the tools that I have, which other people don't play, may be employed against me. Many of the solutions to those which I do play may be used to answer them when I have them. Should be quite hard. So starting off my opening hand as a mulligan, I decided I'm going to keep this here. Unfortunately, I get to go first, which is pretty important in these matches. And the other issue in my favor is that he doesn't have quite every card that he wants to have. Like, he's using Simic Guildgate, but he doesn't want to be using it. He hasn't quite got all of his duels yet because he felt it was more important to get things like Gaia's Cradle, something I wholeheartedly agree with. One thing he has, though, that I don't is Cavern of Souls, and I actually think this is a problem in my list. I need to put Cavern of Souls into my deck. That's plainly amazing. And now that I'm like heavily elf focused, and have been for some time, it just makes a lot of sense. So he develops this way. I don't bother trying to hold up Romance since he's got the Cavern out. And I decide that what I'm going to do is trump and not give him the card. And then make this play here. Sacking Edric to go get Soul of Temptation and take his Edric. And play myself a creature. So he ramps with Nature's Lore and sends in for some damage. It's no problem to me. I'd rather be holding his commander so he has no way to replay it. So with an active pod, I've said it before, this deck never loses when it has an active pod going. And I really do mean never. It's not just hyperbole. So with an active pod going, I'm able to just start really abusing Theft. He's got a Simic Charm, but I finally have something I can counter. I go ahead and just put it back to his hand. Although he'll be able to use the Simic Charm to bounce, Sower, his better play actually is to bounce his own Edric back to his hand. Bounces a control magic back to my hand. I'm just going to replay it. And there's my son. Hey, bud. So he decides he's going to make the Simic Charm play, but he chooses what I think was the wrong target there. He hits the Sower. I mentioned it to him, and I think later he ends up agreeing, but I top deck like a champ. Rift, and I've got tons and tons and tons of mana right now, so I just Sower it right back. Sack my Boreal Druid to get a Phantasmal Image. Sower his Arbor. And then send in for some damage and some cards. This is pretty much super deteriorated. Pod is just gross in this deck. Especially even now, like that I've got an additional clone in the form of Phantasmal Image. Being able to just kill Edric to get Sower, and then kill Edric again to get a clone of Sower, and then kill a Mana Elf to get another clone. It's just crazy. So game 2, he's going first. Very key advantage, although it's not the decider. That's right, son. It isn't the decider. But it is tough. So he goes first, and I keep what seems to be a decent hand, but he has a much, much better hand than I do. It quickly goes downhill for me when Sylvan Library hits the board, and he's got a ton of mana. The best thing I can do is really just try to get my commander out and hope that he doesn't draw a Soul Ring and overwhelm me. Haha. I'm pretty much in a lot of trouble here, so I go for Squirrel Nest, because I figure he might have a counter here. Turns out he does, and Nest wasn't that important to me, but Nest would be decent because it allows me to continuously trump Edric, and I really don't want to be trading with him since he's got Soul Ring and Library he's got way more mana than I do, so however, he's got Tezzeret, and yeah, this game is pretty much done for. I fight it out, though. I go for Terastodon to try to clear out some of the problem cards. But it's too little too late. And giving triple Elephant to a guy with Edric That is no bueno. Even worse when he fetches Cradle. Using my own tech against me. Crushed. Well played, Zig. So we move on to game 3. Yeah. My son's going to be a great Magic player, I hope. Or maybe he won't like the game and he won't play. Who knows? But dads can hope. So game 3. This is the most epic, one of the most epic games ever. Definitely the best Edric on Edric game I've had. So we're talking about, he's talking about how he has, he built the deck and he went 16-0 and then had a couple losses, but he hasn't tweaked it fully. So, very cool. So luckily I'm going first with a slowish hand, and I decide what I'm going to do here is, he's got a fast hand. What I decide I'm going to do here is Mystical Tutor for Force, because I figure the thing will be to push through a natural order or another key play, and that I have a couple different, blue spells I can use to try to do that. So he plays Trigon Predator. And Tezzeret, who was looking pretty good, stops looking as good as he was. And I decided that for the purposes of mana, I wanted to play Edric since that'll put Bloom Tender on 2 instead of side blasting his Predator. So he ramps out and then decides not to play his Edric, which was interesting, and passes the turn. So I go for Hive Master, figuring that means he probably has a counter. Sure enough, he does. Hive Master in the mirror is actually such a bomb that it's quite possible I should have Force of Willed here with Tez and then just Psionic Blasted his Predator. It's quite possible just because Hive Master will produce tokens off of both elves, sets of elves. I think I underestimated how good it was there. But I do clear out his Predator and draw a card. So I'm feeling alright now. He goes for Edric and I, allow, because I didn't want to force into a possible remand or something. And besides, I have natural order. So, send in my commander, figuring he's going to trade, and he does, and that's cool. However, I misplayed. I meant to tap the Bloom Tender before combat to play the Priest. Now I don't have 6 mana to do anything, everything that I wanted to do is very painful, so I have to give him one more turn. So he goes for Jite, and that I force. And it resolves, so I decide Edric's more important than Glenn. He's got a counter. If I'd have played Glenn, he wouldn't have been able to counter. It's just a lot of things went wrong for me this game. I really kind of misplayed this early game, and he has the cards to punish me for it. So he goes for Tempo with Jace, and I decide that I need to develop as well. And so I get an army to hopefully kill his Jace next turn, draw some cards. But he's not playing the 2-mana clone. He is, however, playing the 4-mana clone, and he gets his own army, and now I've got a wall of squirrel protecting Jace. Pretty terrible. Hey, son, you alright? So, upkeep, I decide I'm not going to pay to... It doesn't make any sense to really pay to have these squirrels be big, and I've got stuff I've got to do. So, I get down with Cradle immediately. Cradle into Scrib and Glenn. And then I decide I'm going to send a couple guys at Jace because I figure he's going to have to block to protect it. And I don't want him to have too many creatures in play. I want creatures because of my Cradle, but I don't want him to have too many. Because if he does manage to get Edric down and do something with it, that's less creatures for him to be drawing cards with later. So I just send 2 because 2 to attack and 2 to block is what I'm thinking. Plus, like I said, I don't want to kill my guys with the Cradle. Oh, my son here. There you go, kid. It's okay. Baby, interrupt us. Alright, I'm going to have to pause this video for a moment. Alright, carrying on. Hopefully that wasn't too long of a break there, but anyway. So, I don't know if my son's going to pick up again, but we'll see. So he does not pay the echo on his hermit, which was nice. It would be nice to have one in play in some ways, just because you can trade scrolls for Edric. That's okay. So he jaces for cards and goes for Glen, which of course I can't counter with mine. And then he plays Sower of Temptation. And I have to pause again. Alright, bottle and diaper have been addressed now, so anyway, Glenandra gets stolen by Sower of Temptation. So if you look at the board right here, this looks pretty well over. 4 counter spells, more creatures, and an active Jace. You would think this is it, right? But fortunately I top deck this Windswept Heath. And that is going to... Okay, that's a little bit silly of me to say, but it is actually going to make a difference. So first thing, since he has no Pro Blue blocker, I'm not going to waste time sending that into Jace, hitting it for 1 every turn, and then he just +2s it whenever he feels like. I need to find cards, I need to find solutions. So I draw an Earthcraft, and go for a craft, just to ensure that I have no mana woes whatsoever in the course of the rest of this game. And he decides to play his commander, of course. Sends his 3 flyers, and I pick up and untap Scrib so that I can block the Sower and give him only 2 cards instead of 3. So he plays Vesuva, an interesting choice. I'm not opposed to that idea, actually, just because it means that you have more opportunities to play Cradle, feed off of their Cradle. That's one I need to consider as well. He's got the anti-counterland in here, and the Vesuva, and they both seem pretty good. And then he plays Naturalize on Craft. That's basically the same as what I have in the slot, with a slight difference. I'm using the Glamour now. I was using the Convoke one for a little while, but I decided that I like the Glamour because it'll take down the gods. It'll take down indestructible things like Signet, or the Darksteel Ingot, and the various gods that are now being used as commanders. Particularly the black one, I find to be pretty harsh. So, this turn, I decide the best play I can make is send the entire team. So if you look at what happens here, and not at Jace, of course. Look at what happens here. This gives me an opportunity to draw multiple cards, and it's going to cost me. I'm going to lose my priest. But I'm hoping that what he's going to do is use one of his blocks on my arbor, and he does. So, I simply pick up arbor and untap my Pro Blue guy and draw 2 cards, looking for a solution, and there is something. So arbor is a mana generator with Cradle in play, so I can play it prior to using the Cradle, and I go for 3 on Green Sun Zenith. And at 3, what that allows me to do is go ahead and get myself, well, I probably could have got a Trigon Predator, but what I do is I go ahead and get myself a Witness and pick up that Psyblast that was in the graveyard. With the 2 mana left, take down the Sower while he's tapped out and get my Glen back. So, 2 creatures down and 2 counter spells dealt with. Still, he's got an active Jace going though, so things are not too happy. But he just draws mana sources. Gives me time. So he sends in the team. I can make another block with Scrib if I want to on top of one of my guys. What I decide to do here is throw the Scrib in front of Glen to shut it off. Arbor in front of Edric. Trade a Witness for an Arbor. And throw a bird in front of a squad. I don't want him to get any cards and I'm willing to kill my bird to prevent it. And then after I do that, I pick up Arbor to untap one of my creatures. And so his Edric just bounces off my wall of forest, and he loses an arbor, and I lose 2 cards. But he would have gained. It's either -2 for me, -1 for him, or -1 for me, -1 for him, +1 for him. And I felt like losing a bird is probably less valuable than whatever the top card of his library is, especially when he's got a Jace going and he can dig even further. I was hoping that was all he had left in his hand, that the last card in his hand was not useful, but look at that. A freaking treachery. So he treacheries my Edric and kills his own to make it so that I can't. He locks Edric out like I did in the other game, so I cannot replay my Edric because it's sitting on his side of the board. And this should be probably game over again. However, where he has Temple of the False God, I have added something new myself. That's not it. So I play Arbor and go for Rift, which of course he counters. But his Glen is now 1-1, which means Scrib will kill it, so will Glen, and makes my blocking situation a lot better. And then I actually attack for damage at Jace, hoping that he'll just kill his Glen off, trying to block it, but he doesn't, so Jace gets down to 1 counter. I probably should have sent the whole team. My fear is that he's going to attack back and draw a bunch of cards. I mean, if I kill a Jace and let him draw 4, that's... If I kill a Brainstorm to allow him to Tidings, that's not a good plan. So he Jaces and then sends his team. Of course, I decide I'm going to untap Scrib instead of pre-blocking with Arbor. That allows me to take the Glen down, and then Fellows, he gets 2 cards out of the deal. But I only lose 1 creature. He loses 2. And I'm finally starting to stabilize this board. If I could just get my Edric machine going, I'd be alright. So he gets another Brainstorm, so he's going 5 cards deep this turn. Finds himself a Sword of Feast and Famine. I'm still tapped out. I still can't counter anything with Glen. Who knows, it's been in their play for so long and I just haven't had an opportunity. But I rip like a champ. He's got Temple, I've got Homeward Path. And I immediately say, thank you. My Edric, your treachery, don't care. Back. And that is why, even though I play treachery, sower, and all that stuff, this is why Homeward Path is in the deck. So now I finally am able to attack, and this kills Jace, this draws me a card. And I draw a total blank. So for his turn, he's got to spend mana in order to get his Edric down, or his creatures are worthless. And so he sends in his Sword of Feast and Famine. I thought about untapping and blocking this. I realized, like, well, I don't have any forests. But actually, even if I did, I don't think I would do that. What is it? Why do I care? I'm going to just discard a land. Who cares? I mean, he gets to untap his mana, but he's got all the mana he needs anyway. The real thing I care about is him drawing cards, so I'm just going to have to deal with the fact that he's going to get 1. As it looks right now, I'll draw 2 per turn, he'll draw 1. That's actually a winning strategy, and he's used quite a few of his control magics, but I've got this also in play, signifying that any control magic effects he draws will be effectively blanks for him. So I send and get myself a couple more cards, and just draw more junk lands. But at least I have the remand, gives me a modest chance, like perhaps I could cast a spell and he counters it, and then I remand my spell back to my hand or something. So he swings this way, and I just put the Arbor in front of Edric, and untap Glen. So he only gets 1 card that turn. But that lets me swing back and potentially draw 3 cards. So now I get to kill a Squirrel for free and draw 2 more. I'm just drawing all crap. But after that Homeward Path rip, I'm just not complaining. And plus I did get a mana drain after all. But look at it. I'm so flush with mana. So I pass for the turn. And he scries and puts the card on top of his deck. So when he does that, I was thinking here, what I ought to do is possibly just block both creatures, because the card he put back, he obviously wants it. However, I was thinking, you know, I've got a counterspell and another possible counterspell and Glen's ability to counter. Even if I mana drain, if it's a creature and I mana drain it, he counters back, I can just Glen his counter. So I thought, I'll just go ahead and let him have whatever that top card is, and I just throw it in front of Edric and pick it up. And throw away another meaningless land. And he plays Imperious Perfect, and that's definitely something I don't really play at this point in the game. So I get 3 mana and have 0 use for it. Sending in the team. I send everybody, because this is a chance to draw 4 cards. It's probably going to trade the elf off. He decides to not trade the elf for the ranger, so I'll go ahead and just draw 4. And there we go. Play Elvish Mystic, tap for a whole bunch of mana, get to play Oracle, and now I'm out of this trap where I've been picking up Arbor over and over and over, and now I can play 2 lands per turn, so I get myself out of the trap, and I even fix my next draw to get rid of the forest. So very good in long games, Oracle is. And the rest of the mana, I go ahead and play this. And although I could equip Glen, and I could untap Glen with Sylvan right now using this forest, and then equip Glen and leave a blue back for a counter, and Glen would be able to block this guy and kill it. I figured I felt more comfortable with having 2 counters up for Glen and having that remand, and I figured I could take 1 more hit from his Moonlight Druid, so I don't equip the sword. So he sends both of his guys, and I just continue doing what I've been doing this whole time. And throw away another useless land. He plays Winter Orb, who cares, I have a sword. And here it comes, boom, boom, game over. And so he says, we compliment each other on the playing and the gameplay, and we call it a game. So this has been a long video, but I do hope that you've enjoyed it. It was a pretty crazy comeback from my opponent having sword, double Glen, having control of my commander and everything else. But you can see that, as I've said before, like every single card in this deck, every single one has been fairly well thought out, or very well thought out, and has a very, at any rate, has a very specific purpose. Everything from the path to the blast to the oracle to the clones, all of it. It's all in there because they have a role to play, and I often anticipate facing. My thinking is that I want to be able to beat the best deck. I don't want to be the best deck, and that means you need to be able to beat yourself. And these additional, I think these extra removals and extra control magics and such, and the counters to control magic, assist with that end in mind. Here is the deck list. I have been back and forth on my disenchant selection, but I think the Glamour is probably the right call. The Glamour, like I said, it allows you to kill the gods, and it also allows you to kill things that might regenerate or whatever. And sometimes you play against, like, Memnarch as the commander, and your opponent goes, you play Island, and then they go, Mock, they go, Crypt, Soul Ring, Mana Vault, Memnarch, and you're just like, I'll go get the Glamour, shuffle it away. I mean, even if you kill it, like, they'll have tons of mana and it won't matter. Throw a Golden Lotus or whatever in there. So it's good against anything like that. Sometimes you play against, like, Karn. Sometimes you play against, was it Sen Triplets, or is it the other one that's the artifact creature? So I have a feeling this card's going to be pretty awesome, and it is one of the few ways that in this color, since there's no Bant Charm, I can tuck artifact commanders away. So that's it. I hope you enjoyed the games, and my son certainly was lively in the middle of it. That's just how it goes when you're a dad. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.